seem to know just what to say and the right moment to say it, or when a gesture offers more than words. These are the people who become white ladies because that's who they're born to be. White Lady Funerals, a woman's understanding.
The good thing about luxury is, well, it's just so luxurious. And now with Clarendon's luxury living promotion, you can fill your new home with 22 luxury upgrades, like air conditioning, higher ceilings, stone bench tops, and a freestanding bar. 22 upgrades for $4,990. Live it up in luxury in a home designed for life in the Hunter. Clarendon at Harvest Estate Chisholm. clarendon.com.au.
Tonight on 9, who has what it takes to turn heads and chairs in the toughest season yet on all new The Voice blind auditions, followed by 60 Minutes. Afterwards, the follow-up documentary to KKK, Black Power, America's Armed Resistance.
A young woman was hospitalised and more than a dozen other revellers treated by paramedics after a mystery substance was released on a Melbourne dance floor this morning. One patron says no one seemed to know what was going on as the popular venue was evacuated by staff and police.
From party atmosphere to panic, the Perseverance Bar at Fitzroy was packed around 1 a.m. when dance floor revellers were suddenly struck with breathing difficulties.
Felt very tight in the chest, and the only way to get rid of it was to cough.
Paramedics treated around 15 people for respiratory problems, including a woman in her 20s who was taken to hospital. Kalia Donetto and her friends were buying drinks when coughing and confusion spread throughout the venue.
It was actually very scary, like to be coughing and not knowing, and to see that the staff also looked as confused as us, that was a bit worrying as well.
Metropolitan Fire Brigade crews assisted by supplying oxygen to some victims. They also used a gas detector to try and ascertain what mystery substance had been released, but the irritant had dispersed before it could be identified. About 10 minutes before the incident, police were called to the club in response to a brawl. A 27-year-old Tullamarine man was arrested in relation to that, but officers won't confirm if the fight and the following emergency were linked. This afternoon, management released a statement saying, last night there was an incident at the Perseverance that involved an altercation between patrons and also a patron that used a spray believed to be a capsicum spray. We are working with police and authorities to support them in their investigation. The safety of our patrons is our #1 priority.
I didn't know what was going on, and I'm just happy that we're all okay now, yeah.
Emergency meetings have been held across the world as a global task force hunts down those responsible for the internet's biggest simultaneous cyber attack. 100 countries were thrown into chaos, but the UK was hardest hit with hospitals forced to close.
The doctors, the nurses, the staff who work in the NHS have moved so quickly to make sure that they can carry on with most of their operations and be seen as normal.
There are no reports of Australian organisations being affected. Gibraltar is a European headland that's been fought over for centuries. Now it's once again at the centre of a battle. Britain is in charge of the territory, but Spain wants to use the UK's decision to leave the EU to push for joint sovereignty. Michael Best reports.
It's the Rock in a bit of a hard place. Gibraltar, a fortress for centuries, watched over by the only wild monkeys in Europe, the legendary apes of the Rock. It's 6.8 square kilometres of densely packed development. Space is so tight, the main road in and out crosses the airport runway. Cars and people bank up to let planes through before the road is reopened again. The craggy outcrop that controls the entrance to the Mediterranean has been fought over since ancient times. But since 1704, it's been British, and from the pubs to the fish and chips, you can see it's stayed that way.
For us locals here, it's paradise, complete paradise.
But things have become a little more complicated lately. It's all to do with Brexit. The EU wants Spain to have the final say over any agreement that applies to Gibraltar. The Spanish have always wanted the enclave back.
There is, I think, a desire that this jewel should no longer be British but Spanish, but that's not going to change.
It's still prompted a war of words and posturing. First, from the UK, comparing the situation to the Falklands War of the 1980s.
35 years ago this week, another woman Prime Minister sent a task force halfway across the world to defend the freedom of another small group of British people